born from the dust of a young sun. Part 1. 1 billion years after Jupiter was born from the dust of a young sun. It had survived everything the universe could throw at it. For billions of years, the giant planet watched continents form on a young Earth, watched dinosaurs rise and vanish, watched a single restless species invent fire, split the atom, and finally step beyond its home world. Nothing in the long history of the solar system had ever disturbed Jupiter's endless orbit, until one ordinary Tuesday. The first warning didn't come from Earth. It came from Europa. Nearly 700 million kilometers away, buried beneath 20 kilometers of ice, the Europa Deep Space Observatory quietly watched everything that entered the solar system. It wasn't a military base. There were no soldiers, no weapons, only scientists searching for things that shouldn't exist and usually not finding them. Most nights were painfully boring, and Dr. Elena Soto preferred it that way. At 39, she had spent nearly half her life studying deep space anomalies, and 99% of them turned out to be nothing. Broken satellites, background radiation, sensor errors. She expected tonight to be no different. As she finished her coffee, a soft tone echoed across the control room, not an alarm, just a notification. Observation Array 7 had logged an unexplained dip in reflected sunlight around Jupiter's northern hemisphere. Elena barely looked up. Probably another calibration issue, she muttered, calling toward the back of the room without turning around. Marcus, rerun Array 7 for me. Marcus Hale, the station's systems engineer, sighed with theatrical suffering. If it's another calibration error, I'm naming and shaming whoever built these telescopes. You said that yesterday. I meant it yesterday, too. A few scientists laughed quietly. Europa Observatory wasn't a place where people expected history to happen. It was where history got written up after someone else had already lived it. Marcus typed a few commands. The telescope recalibrated. A new image resolved on the main display, and the room went quiet. Elena looked up. Jupiter itself hadn't changed. The light around it had. A massive shadow rippled across the upper atmosphere, then vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Marcus frowned. That's not possible. Run it again, Elena said, already stepping closer to the screen. Seconds later, the shadow reappeared, except this time it wasn't crossing Jupiter. It was moving slowly against the fixed background of distant stars. Nobody spoke. The computer flagged the object automatically. At first it looked like nothing at all, a patch of space darker than the darkness around it. No reflected light, no thermal signature, no electromagnetic emissions. By every reasonable measure, it shouldn't have been visible. And yet every telescope in the observatory could see it. Marcus enlarged the image, and the pixels slowly sharpened. The shape that emerged made no sense. It wasn't round like a planet, and it wasn't irregular like an asteroid. Its edges were almost perfectly straight. Nature rarely built straight lines. Civilizations did. Tell me that's a sensor artifact, Marcus said. Elena didn't answer. Instead, she activated 3 independent telescopes, each positioned thousands of kilometers apart. If the object was a glitch, it would vanish from at least one feed. If it was real, all 3 would agree. One by one, the images arrived. They matched perfectly, no distortion, no disagreement. The object was real. For the first time in 11 years at this post, Elena felt something close to genuine fear. Not because she knew what she was looking at, but because she didn't. She calculated its distance first, beyond Saturn, far past any human colony. Then its velocity. Her hands stopped above the keyboard. Marcus noticed. What is it? I think she ran the numbers again. The answer didn't change. No. He crossed the room. What? She turned the monitor toward him without a word. The object wasn't accelerating. It wasn't decelerating. It wasn't adjusting course for anything not Jupiter's pull, not the sun's, not even its own mass. It moved through the solar system with absolute precision, as if gravity simply didn't apply to it. Marcus stared at the numbers. That's impossible. I know, Elena said. From the far side of the room, another researcher spoke up, hesitant. "I've estimated its dimensions." No one answered right away. "I think the software's broken." "Why?" "It says the object is over 3,000 kilometers long." The room laughed, not because it was funny, but because the alternative wasn't bearable. 3,000 kilometers was larger than entire nations, larger than anything ever built by anyone. Marcus checked the math himself, then another scientist checked it, then another. Every result came back the same, 3,112 kilometers. The laughter died, and silence filled the observatory in its place. Outside, Jupiter continued its endless circuit of the sun, entirely unaware that something older than human civilization, and larger than any ship ever conceived, was quietly closing in from the darkness beyond Saturn. Then every monitor in the building flashed red, and a single line of text appeared on all of them at once. "Unknown object has altered course." It wasn't heading for Earth. It wasn't heading for Mars or Jupiter or any human colony at all. Its new trajectory pointed somewhere far beyond the solar system entirely, toward a place humanity had only ever reached through diplomacy. The capital of the Galactic Council. Elena stared at the projection for a long moment before she said the thing nobody in the room wanted to hear. Someone should warn them. For nearly 4 minutes, no one at Europa Observatory said a single word. The vast black object continued its silent crossing of the outer solar system, indifferent to the fact that it was being watched. Elena finally broke the silence. "Record everything." Nobody asked why. Every instrument on the station turned toward the object's spectrometers, gravimetric scanners, neutrino detectors, even equipment built to study black holes. Within seconds, the observatory had gathered more data than it normally collected in 6 months. Marcus leaned over his console. "This still doesn't make sense." Elena looked up. "What now?" "I'm reading gravity." "So, not enough of it." She crossed to his station. The readings showed a gravitational signature barely larger than a small asteroid's, nowhere near what something 3,000 kilometers long should produce. Anything that size should have been visibly warping space around it, dragging in debris, bending starlight at its edges. Instead, it barely disturbed anything at all. "If it's really the size we're measuring," Marcus said slowly, "it should be pulling in everything nearby. It isn't." "So either the calculations are wrong," Elena said, or whatever it's made of doesn't behave like normal matter." The room went quiet again. For centuries, humanity had believed it understood the rules the universe ran on. Tonight, those rules were coming apart at the seams, one measurement at a time. 9 minutes later, the first encrypted transmission reached Earth. Inside the United Nations Orbital Command Center above Geneva, Admiral Nathan Reyes stood at the observation window when his communications officer entered. "Sir, Europa's confirmed the object. Probability 99.98%. So it's real. It wasn't really a question." "Yes, sir." "And the size estimate?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she handed him a tablet. He read the report once, then again, 3,112 kilometers. He lowered the tablet slowly. "Notify the Science Council." "What threat level do I log it as?" Nathan looked out at the stars for a moment. "I don't know," he said, "and that's exactly what worries me." Within the hour, the sharpest scientific minds on Earth had gathered inside Orbital Command, astrophysicists, engineers, artificial intelligence specialists, exobiologists. For 3 hours, they picked apart everything Europa had collected. Every line of inquiry ended the same way, unknown. Professor Ibrahim Noor finally rose. "I think we're asking the wrong question." The room turned toward him. "We've spent hours trying to identify what this object is." He gestured at the hologram floating above the table. "We should be asking why it's ignoring us." Nathan crossed his arms. "Meaning?" "It's crossed the paths of dozens of our stations without changing speed. It hasn't scanned a single one of our ships. It hasn't acknowledged our existence at all." He paused. That's not how an invasion fleet behaves. Then how does it behave? Like someone driving past a small town, Noor said. They know we're here, they simply aren't interested. The room went quieter still. Somehow, that possibility felt worse than an invasion. At exactly 2:17 Universal Standard Time, everything changed. On Europa, every monitor went black at once. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. I didn't lose power, Marcus said. Neither had anyone else. Every system was running normally, except that every screen in the building now displayed the same image, a perfect white circle floating against black. No one had programmed it. No one recognized it. The symbol held for exactly 5 seconds. Then it began to change, lines appearing inside the circle one after another, perfectly straight, perfectly symmetrical, until an impossible geometric pattern had formed. Analyze, Marcus told the station AI. Processing. 5 seconds passed. Then 10. Then 30. The system had translated alien languages before. It had decoded mathematics from civilizations hundreds of light years distant. This time it struggled. At last a response. Pattern recognized. Language unknown. Mathematics universal. A second line followed. The AI had managed to render exactly 3 words. Is anyone left? Before we continue, what do you think this message really means? Who do you think they're looking for? Let me know your theory in the comments. No one spoke. That, Marcus finally said, doesn't sound like a threat. Elena shook her head slowly. No, it sounds like a question. More than 600 light-years away, the Galactic Council was in the middle of its weekly session trade agreements, economic sanctions, territorial disputes, the galaxy's most powerful civilizations arguing over mining rights and shipping lanes. None of them yet knew that a question asked from the edge of a minor solar system was meant for them. Not for Earth, not for Jupiter, not for humanity at all. And judging by the age of the signal, whoever or whatever had sent it hadn't been home in a very long time. As the object crossed Saturn's orbit, a section of its black surface slowly unfolded, not like a door and not like a weapon, but like the petals of an enormous metal flower opening toward the stars. Deep inside, for the first time, a faint blue light became visible. Then another, then hundreds. The object wasn't waking up. It had already been awake. It had simply decided it was time to announce itself. By the time the signal reached the Council, it had traveled farther than any transmission humanity had ever intercepted, not through radio waves, not through quantum relay, and certainly not through any channel physics could explain. It simply arrived, as though space itself had agreed to carry it. For nearly an hour, every supercomputer on Earth worked to translate what remained. Every attempt failed. The structure behind the message wasn't merely advanced, it was unfamiliar in kind. Human mathematics was built on logic. Whatever this was seemed built on geometry itself, equations folding into one another like pieces of an impossible puzzle. The machines didn't crash. They simply admitted defeat, one after another, until only 3 words remained understood. Is anyone left? The question echoed through every briefing room on Earth, not for what it said, but for what it implied. Whoever had sent it wasn't looking for a planet and wasn't looking for humanity. They were looking for survivors. Nearly 600 light-years away, the Council had no idea it was the one being searched for. Its chamber stood at the center of Nexus Prime, an artificial world nearly the size of Earth's moon built, not born layer by layer, generation after generation, as each new civilization joined and added its own section. 47 civilizations, one government, at least on paper. The truth was messier. The strongest species voted and the weaker ones agreed. Ambassador Lena Vasquez had learned that lesson in her very first session, and 11 years hadn't changed it. She watched another debate unfold across the circular chamber, officially about trade routes, unofficially about which powers would control them, while the smaller delegations mostly waited for permission to speak. She recognized the pattern from Earth's own history. Only the names had changed. The session dragged on for another half-hour before the chamber lights dimmed and the high speaker rose. Every conversation stopped. The next matter concerns humanity. Lena looked up. A few delegates smiled, a few rolled their eyes. Whenever humanity appeared on the agenda, someone usually wanted something from them. The high speaker brought up a projection of the solar system. Our long-range monitoring has reported unusual activity around Jupiter. He paused. We understand your astronomers have identified an unidentified object. Lena kept her expression level. Her pulse did not. A murmur ran through the chamber. Apparently the council had known before Earth expected them to. One delegate laughed. A drifting asteroid has frightened the humans again. Another nodded. They startle so easily. Several others chuckled until the high speaker raised a hand for quiet. Our own platforms confirmed the anomaly. The room sobered fast. It is unusual. Lena noticed something she had never seen from him before. Hesitation. Only for a moment, but long enough to be unmistakable and unsettling in a man who had built a career on certainty. Back on Earth, Admiral Reyes received a second transmission from Europa. No words this time, only images. Thousands of frames strung into a single continuous sequence covering the last 40 minutes. Marcus played it back. The object drifted silently across the stars, unchanged, frame after frame, until frame 2814. Pause, Nathan said, leaning in. Marcus froze the image. Something small had appeared beside the object. At first it looked like debris. Then it moved. Another point appeared, then another, until within seconds hundreds of smaller shapes had emerged from the darkness surrounding the giant construct, not launched, not deployed, simply revealed as if they had been there all along, invisible against the black hull. Professor Noor studied the measurements. Those aren't fighters. No, Marcus said. Too large. How large? Noor read the number twice before he trusted it. Roughly 12 kilometers each. Silence answered him. Humanity's largest warship measured barely 2 kilometers stem to stern. Whatever surrounded the ancient object made humanity's proudest fleet look like a line of fishing boats. Inside the council chamber, a security officer hurried to the high speaker's side and murmured something Lena couldn't hear. She didn't need to. His expression changed the instant the words landed, not fear exactly, but something close enough to worry her. He dismissed the officer and faced the chamber again. Our outer network confirms additional objects accompanying the anomaly. Delegates traded uneasy looks while the military attachés bent over their tactical displays. One finally spoke. Fleet composition. Unknown, the officer answered. Weapon signatures. None detected. Engine emissions. None. Another silence, longer this time. Even the oldest civilizations in the room looked, for once, genuinely uncomfortable. Lena noticed something else. 3 of the eldest delegates, representatives of species that had helped found the council thousands of years earlier, were staring at the projected images with something that wasn't confusion. It was recognition, not certainty, but the particular stillness of people who have seen a thing before and hoped never to see it again. One of them, ancient even by his own people's standards, whispered a single word, one so old the translators couldn't parse it. Lena watched his hands begin to shake. Then he looked straight at the high speaker. We should leave. The chamber erupted. Leave? What is he talking about? The old delegate ignored every voice raised against him. His eyes never left the black shape drifting beyond Saturn. When he spoke again, it was almost a whisper. If that is what I believe it is, then the Council has already run out of time. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had believed it had seen everything worth seeing. Civilizations had risen and fallen. Stars had been mined for fuel. Entire worlds had been towed between systems like cargo. Nothing surprised the Council anymore. Or so its members had told themselves for longer than most species had existed. Now, in the chamber, the hologram of the unknown object turned slowly above the delegates, and no one spoke, not because they had nothing to say, but because for the first time in centuries, no one knew what to say. The object had crossed Saturn's orbit. Its course hadn't changed. Its speed hadn't changed, and despite thousands of sensors now trained on it, the council still knew nothing. The silence broke with the oldest delegate in the room, Kayla, representative of the Ethrin Dominion, whose people had joined the council nearly 9,000 years earlier and carried, among all living civilizations, the longest unbroken memory. Kayla rose slowly, his hands trembling not with age, but with something closer to memory. "I have seen this design before." The chamber erupted again. The high speaker raised a hand. "You are certain?" Kayla closed his eyes. "When I was a child, my grandmother told stories that were forbidden to record, stories older than our civilization, a fleet that appeared without warning, a fleet that spoke only once, and after that, his voice thinned, entire empires simply ceased to exist." Laughter answered him from one side of the chamber. A younger delegate leaned back in his seat. "We're deciding policy based on children's stories now." Kayla didn't look at him. "Do you know why the stories were forbidden?" No one answered. "Because every civilization that wrote them down disappeared soon after." The laughter stopped. 600 million kilometers away, Dr. Elena Sato was noticing something stranger still. The object wasn't merely moving anymore, it was slowing, by a fraction of a percent, barely measurable, but enough to prove one thing. It had reached where it meant to go. Marcus stared at the recalculated numbers. "It isn't passing through the system, it came here on purpose." "Then why stop now?" Elena asked. Before he could answer, every screen in the observatory flickered, and the geometric symbols returned. Except this time they were changing, slowly and methodically, as though whatever produced them had noticed it was being watched. Marcus tried the translation software. Nothing. He tried a quantum learning model. Nothing. Finally, he disconnected every automated system and studied the symbols by eye. His expression shifted. "Elena, I don't think these are words." She leaned closer. He pointed to a repeating shape. "It's a map." "Of what?" He overlaid it against a three-dimensional model of the Milky Way, and the room went still. Every symbol lined up with a known star system. One symbol pulsed over and over, brighter than the rest. The Galactic Council. On Nexus Prime, routine business gave way to emergency session after emergency session. Military commanders arrived from every member world. Defense fleets went to standby. Officially, the Council called it a precaution. Unofficially, thousands of warships were already moving toward the outer sectors. Ambassador Vasquez watched the panic settle over the chamber in silence. For years, humanity had been treated as the inexperienced newcomer, tolerated more than respected. Now the oldest civilizations in the galaxy were whispering to each other like frightened children, and she found she took no satisfaction in it at all. She turned to Kayla. "You truly believe this is connected to your grandmother's stories?" He didn't answer at once. Instead, he drew a small crystal pendant from beneath his robes, its surface cracked with age. "My family has carried this for 87 generations." Tiny symbols had been carved into its face, symbols that looked, to Lena, uncomfortably familiar. She pulled up the image Earth had transmitted hours earlier and held it beside the crystal. The marks matched, not similar, not merely inspired by, identical. Kayla saw her expression change. "You've seen these before." "This morning," she said. He closed his eyes. Then the stories were true. At that moment, the object performed its first unmistakable act. Thousands of dark panels along its hull rotated outward in perfect unison, not weapons, not engines. Observatories across the system magnified the feed. Structures large enough to hold entire cities emerged from the surface. Metal towers extended into open space. Rings began to rotate around the central body, and blue light moved through channels cut into the hull like rivers of something more than electricity. "It's activating," Professor Noor said, watching the live feed. Nathan shook his head, eyes on the velocity readings. "No, it's preparing." "For what?" He didn't answer, because he genuinely didn't know. Then every communication network across the solar system went silent at once. Earth, Mars, Europa, Titan, every colony, every satellite, every military relay. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing could send or receive a signal. Then the networks returned, carrying one transmission that appeared simultaneously on every screen, in every language, on every system in use anywhere in human space. No encryption, no interference, one sentence. Galactic Council, your judgment is overdue. No signature, no explanation, 4 words and nothing more. Across Earth, people stared at their devices in confusion. Inside the council chamber, several of the oldest delegates rose so fast their chairs clattered to the floor. Kaler didn't move. He only lowered his head, as if he had been waiting for exactly those words for 9,000 years. The High Speaker looked around the chamber, and for the first time in the council's recorded history, no one asked what to do next, because everyone had arrived in the same instant at the same understanding. The object hadn't come to conquer humanity. It hadn't come to explore the solar system. It hadn't even come looking for the Galactic Council out of curiosity. What do you think happened next? Let me know in the comments, then watch part 2 tomorrow to find out. Subscribe.